Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Power corrupts. We started fight for independence with values, things that we believed in. We wanted freedom for everybody. One man, one vote. We wanted to end white colonial oppression so that our people can live in freedom. We never attained that. When the country was moving towards independence, 1980, Zanu PF leaders could smell the power, and they started changing the rules. One man, one vote was forgotten as the party sought to secure power for itself. By the time the country went to have its first elections in 1980, Robert Mugabe and his colleagues had already made up their mind that they were not going to take any chances of losing power in a free, fair, and credible election. So they made it very clear that if Zanu PF does not win the election, the Bush war would continue. Of course, the people voted to end the Bush war. And no sooner had Mugabe and these men got their feet under the table, they started consolidating their hold on power. Mugabe started by corrupting his own fellow Zanu PF leaders. Giving them the trappings of high office, the E-class Mercedes-Benz. And that made them realize that power is sweet. They were not going to give it up. Here is Dr. Simba Makone explaining how quickly Mugabe corrupted his fellow Zanu PF leaders.
I recall very clearly that when we came into office in 1980, we inherited Ian Smith's systems. And Ian Smith's ministers drove Peugeot 504s. They drove themselves from home to work in their Land Rovers and all in kinds. Most of them were farmers. They parked their Land Rover and then they used the government vehicle when they were at work with a chauffeur. When they finished at night, they packed them and they took theirs to go home. Within the month of our coming into office, Prime Minister Mugabe then directed that every minister be issued with an E-class Mercedes-Benz, and the Peugeot 504s were retired to permanent secretaries, and the deputy ministers then took over. We can also look at many other things, small they may appear at the time. Let me hazard that even at that point, Inosankala was our Minister of Finance. I don't think we knew what budget we inherited from Ian Smith when the decision was taken to buy those E-class fleets for the ministers. So the material affection for material things has always been with us. And the differentiation also, even going back into the camps, Zema Shefu, Neze, my comrades, Makada, were not the same. So much so that even today, when the so-called Minister for Presidential Affairs or Provincial Governor, as they were, goes to Bubi or Binga, they will be served separately and differently from the other people. The other...
Well, the point has been made. That was the genesis of this patronage system. I think it is no exaggeration that Mugabe had one of the most complying cabinets in the world. He bribed them with the E-class Mercedes-Benz, all the benefits of high office. And instead of holding Mugabe as an equal, challenging him even when the need clearly arose, they all became compliant. So much so that Mugabe was able to do as he pleased. Indeed, Margaret Dongo at one point was so frustrated by the level of yes men within Zanu PF party, parliament, cabinet, that she called the Zanu PF colleagues Wakazwa Mugabe, Mugabe's concubines. I think Mugabe himself must have been tickled by that, because he knew that was exactly what he had set out to do. We had a situation here where power corrupted Zanu PF leaders, and they forgot the revolutionary values of freedom, justice, and equal opportunity for everyone in pursuit of their selfish needs. By the late 1990s, the people of Zimbabwe realized that they had a regime in Zanu PF that had tested power and was determined to stay in power no matter what. The only way to stop Zanu PF was for the nation to risk all to elect the opposition leaders who will implement the democratic reforms to get back the nation back on a democratic footing. The number one task of the MDC leaders was to bring about the democratic changes the nation was dying for. Let's be very clear on that point. When MDC was launched in 1999, they called their party the Movement for Democratic Change, answering that very call that the nation was making, need for democratic change. Alas, Mugabe used the same trick during the GNU when MDC leaders had their best opportunity to implement the reforms we're talking about. He bribed them with the same E-class Mercedes-Benz that Dr. Makoni was talking about there. Very generous salaries. For Morgan Tsvangirai himself, he got a mansion worth $4 million US. And guess what? The MDC guys forgot about the reforms. They failed to implement even one token reform during the GNU. And ever since the GNU, they have been participating in flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy. And that brings me back to the subject of today. We have MDC leaders, Triple C leaders, who now believe that they are not accountable. We're back to where we started. We wanted them to implement democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF being a dictatorship, ending the de facto one-party state, to make Zanu PF leaders or any leaders in public office democratically accountable to the people. And the people risked everything to elect these MDC Triple C leaders to do that. And now we find ourselves in a situation where 25 years down the line, they've not only failed to implement even one token reform to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections and riding roughshod over the people, they've been conning people to participate in flawed elections, knowing fully well that they are flawed, knowing fully well that by participating, you're giving Zanu PF legitimacy. And they have the cheek to turn around and tell us that we can't hold them to account. This is really amazing. Here is Chamisa in a video that he released a few days ago, talking of that very point.
Hello, how are you? Yes, how is everything that side, and how are you doing wherever you are? Please take this message. Ignore the haters. Ignore those who are hired to pull others down. Let's lift each other up. The future is for all of us going up and not any one of us going down. God bless you. God is in it.
What people must realize there is that Chamisa, the people had been clamoring that he should account what happened in the 2023 elections. What really happened in the 2023 elections? He is on record telling people that Triple C was going to win big. Hashtag God is in it. Triple C did not win those elections. Zanu PF blatantly rigged those elections. And when people turn around and say, okay, are you going to admit that you lied about plugging all the vote rigging loopholes? Suddenly, those people are called haters now, pulling him down. I think this is the kind of arrogance that we had seen in Zanu PF. And now we are seeing it being repeated in the opposition. We set out to implement the democratic reforms to make the opposition, Zanu PF, accountable to the people. Yes, that was the primary purpose of the democratic changes. And the men and women we sent out to achieve this have not only failed to deliver on that, they themselves are now believe that they are not accountable either. Because that is exactly what Chamisa is saying here. And he has followed this up actually with more releases. This is his latest on Twitter. where he's talking about the same issues here that I'm talking about, that he was talking about in the video. The people who are asking him to be accountable for what happened during the 2023 elections are now being labeled public enemies, number one. These are people with all the engineered ridicule, with all the contrived question marks, with all the paid lies and falsehoods, with all the sponsored malice and humiliation. This is ridiculous. Why is it that asking him to account for what he did, what he said, is now considered a crime? We are back to where we started. Zanu PF was never accountable to the people. That is one thing the likes of Chris Mnangagwa has been very, very emphatic about. Zanu PF fought the war of liberation and the divine right to rule. Holding Zanu PF to account, as far as people like Mnangagwa was concerned, was out of the question. But that is exactly what we wanted MDC to implement reforms to end. And now we find ourselves in a situation where MDC themselves believe they're not accountable. When people started asking MDC CCC to explain why they failed to implement even one reform during the GNU, the initial reaction was the stonewall silence. They never responded to those questions. Then the response was improved. The nation was bombarded by the biblical verses and repeated claims that leaders like Chamisa were divinely inspired. And everything he was doing, God was in it. Hashtag God is in it. And now we've come full circle, where those who dare ask for democratic accountability are considered public enemies. The people of Zimbabwe have got to wake up to the reality that until we can have leaders who are democratically accountable to the people, Zimbabwe will never get out of the political and economic mess we are in. What we have seen here is how power is corrupted Zanu PF in the first place, to make them forget about the revolutionary values that we all thought we were fighting for, and how power has corrupted in turn MDC CCC leaders, make them forget about the reforms, made them con people to participate in flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy for the sake of a share of the spoils of power. And give the same individuals the arrogance to believe that they are not accountable to us ordinary mortals. The worst thing we can do is allow people like Chamisa to get away with it. I repeat, Chamisa lied to con people to participate in the 2023 elections. Here he is, and I've played this video several times, but it's worth hearing again. Here he is repeating the claim that God was in it, in his claim that CCC would win 2023.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifoiri. Plan ya Mwari haifoiri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
That video clip is worth hearing again and again, because we are going to hear it again and again. As we move towards 2028 elections, Chamisa is going to tell the people that he has devised ways of winning 2028 elections, and people should participate in those elections, knowing fully well that not even one token reform was implemented. And at the end of the day, when Zanu PF has rigged the elections and has legitimacy, he will once again turn round and dismiss those who will be asking him, you were lying about winning the 2028 elections, just as you were lying about winning the 2023 elections. They will be called once again those engineering ridicule, contriving question marks. They will be the detractors. Chamisa does not believe that he's accountable to the people. It is our responsibility to make sure that he is accountable to the people. More so before the 2028 elections. We cannot afford to have another rigged elections in 2028. The country cannot afford that. If Zanu PF rigs elections because no reforms were implemented, then the regime should not get away with it. But if people are called to participate, Zanu PF will get away with it. Stay in the light. The right time will come. Stay the course. The right moment will come, said Chamisa. These are just the opening words before he conned people with the same lies as he did in 2023. to participate in 2028 elections. I repeat, Zimbabwe cannot afford to let Zanu PF rig the 2028 elections and get away with it. But if people participate in 2028 elections in their millions, believing Chamisa's idiotic lies, Zanu PF will rig and get away with it. The people must wake up to the reality that MDC, CCC leaders are not going to implement the democratic changes as promised. They are Zanu PF Team B in all but name, playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have legitimacy. That is not rocket science. It's obvious, it's common sense. The people of Zimbabwe must open their eyes and see it for themselves. Thank you. Have a good day.